What do you think it means to be a citizen? Is it just voting on election day, paying our taxes, voicing our opinions? Or is it something stickier, deeper, even thicker? Today, a conversation about citizenship, plus a whole lot more. Our friend Wilkinson interviews Braver Angels co-founder Bill Doherty.
Community safety is the work of all of us. You can't hand over the problems of crime and the pursuit of safety to professionals and expect them to solve it. It has to be all of us together.
That's right.
It's the same way with schools, healthcare, everything is the work of we the people. That's the robust idea of citizen.
Our show is about fixes.
Yeah, how to make the world a better place.
How do we fix it?
How do we fix it?
When we ask, how do we fix it? Maybe we should also ask a second question. Who should fix it? Braver Angels co-founder Bill Doherty says the answer to that one should involve all of us, and not merely those we elect or the leaders of public institutions. Hi, I'm Richard Davies. How Do We Fix It reports on the people, projects, and ideas of Braver Angels, the nationwide movement that pushes back against grievance, outrage, and toxic polarization. The way to resist fear is to work together and build civic partnerships across divides. So today we share an interview from a podcast called De-Rate the Hate, hosted by Wilkinson. We also have a link on our show page to more of Wilk's episodes. Let's begin with his first question for Bill Doherty, who co-founded Braver Angels nearly 9 years ago and has thought a lot about what it means to be a citizen.
You tell me what you think citizenship is and what effective citizen leadership is.
Yeah, well, the idea of citizen has gotten kind of watered down to the sort of civics thing. You know, you are you a legal, citizen born here, naturalized citizen, or are you not? Or, and sort of the narrow definition of citizen, and then the voting becomes, what you do as a citizen, and pay your taxes or whatever, and that's a very thin definition of a citizen, right? And one of the problems with that, it really suggests that the problems we have are going to have to be solved by government, by professionals, by somebody else, because we just vote on the people who are going to fix us. Okay, Well, see how that's worked out, right? So a thick view of citizenship is that we, the people, are responsible collectively for identifying our priorities, solving problems, finding ways to have a life together that we are co-responsible for. So, at the same time as I helped Braver Angels get started, I started a project that's also been going on for 8 years, Police and Black Men Project in Minneapolis, a group of 8 officers, 8 black men from the community. And what we came to is that community safety is the work of all of us. You can't hand over the problems of crime and the pursuit of safety to professionals and expect them to solve it. It has to be all of us together.
That's right.
It's the same way with schools, healthcare, everything is the work of we the people. That's the robust idea of citizen.
I love it. I love it. And calling it, the thick view of citizenship versus the thin view of citizenship. I mean, the thin view in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, just the absolute bare minimum, right? Well, I pay my taxes. I go out and vote, that doing the bare minimum. Well, as you said, look what it's gotten us, right? I mean, expecting politicians to come in with some kind of a cape and be our savior just is not, in my opinion, my personal view and my personal life experience, that's not going to get it done. Unfortunately, far too often, those who represent us are just far too often not the best of us. And that's what we get from this thin view of citizenship.
Yeah.
People
Yeah.
not actively engaging in what it means to actually look at what the problems are and how do we best or most effectively address those problems. And that really starts with each of us and we the people.
Yeah. And so one of the things that happens is the more politicians are more liberal on the left, they will promise that government will do more and solve our problems. Okay, politicians on the right say, well, we'll make sure you don't pay too many taxes and we'll deregulate, get the government off your back. But both of them have a thin view of citizenship. So some on the right, it's like minimize government, but then what? Then what? Okay, then what happens after that? And of course, people on the left, it's what's called the vending machine approach to citizenship. You pay your tax and you get stuff back. Okay, and of course, there's a place for that. We need our get Social Security and other things. But I'm saying that our political leaders, left, right, and center, have a thin view of citizenship. So I'm old enough to remember when John F. Kennedy gave his inaugural address. And he said, memorably, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. And we
Absolutely.
were inspired by that. Okay. Anybody who said that now, a politician, unfortunately, would be laughed at.
That's right. That's right. No, it unfortunately, that idea of ask what you can do for your country, people have lost sight of that. And you're right. They'd probably be laughed off the stage, right? Because people are like, no, I don't have to do anything. I'm just here. It's up to you guys to solve my problems. And this is another thing that I think people have lost sight of, and I say it quite often, is those who believe that government is either the cause of or the solution to all of your problems have a very they need a paradigm shift is what they need.
Yeah.
Because neither is true.
Absolutely.
Neither is true.
Now, I'm glad you said that because it's the sort of the mistake of the left to think the government is the solution, but it's the mistake of the right to say the government is the problem. And so if I go back to the policing thing, paradigm one is that the problem is bad policing. If we only cleaned up the police department, then our problems would be solved. Well, no. Obviously, policing needs to reform and keep changing, as all institutions do. But the second paradigm is, well, the problem is that people in the low-income communities commit too many crimes, and they got to raise their kids better. Yeah, okay, but it sort of points the finger. Somebody else other than all of us has to be responsible for solving the problem.
Right. And I think this goes to the point where people have lost sight of the fact that the community is a joint effort, right? I mean, we are human beings are communal figures. We are people that need other people to survive. I mean, that's the way that this thing has worked for so long. What I fear now, Bill, is far too often either you get people on say my side of the political spectrum that are maybe to that extreme on that side that think, oh, well, no, we don't need anybody, we just need ourselves, and you can't tell me what to do, and I've got no responsibility to anybody but myself. And then you've got people on the other side that of the political spectrum that are like, well, it's all about community, and community takes precedence over the citizen, over the individual, so we're going to do that, all the while ignoring the fact that we can't even come to a common solution on what the root cause of most of these problems are. Often, again, politicians will pretend to, in my opinion, have the answer to some thing, but never fully define what the root cause of that thing is. There's no real root cause problem solving taking place. So then what happens is the whole solution, or we start solving for problems that aren't problems in every area, and it just creates more problems. Talk to me about the importance of in effective communities and as, again, effective citizenship. Talk to me about how important actual root cause problem solving is before we pretend to solve problems that most people haven't even defined.
Yeah, yeah. Well, let's take public education. Let's take the fact that our kids are falling behind. Just international comparisons. We're not doing that well, and so the root cause thing is hard to put your finger on. Why are we falling behind? But it seems that what we do is we decide that we're gonna we're gonna solve it by putting professionals onto this. Okay, so I want to talk about professionals, not only government. Okay, so teachers, schools. Okay, and then what we do is we debate public education, charter schools, funding for private education, and we assume the assumption there is that the problem and the solution is all in those buildings. Okay, in the schools. Okay, it's what I call a building-centric approach to defining the problem and the solution. It's like in healthcare. It's all about what happens in the building. Whereas we know in healthcare that 85% or so of what goes into maintaining health is what we do at home in our communities. Okay,
Right.
So with education, it's the same thing. We know from modern studies that a big proportion of kids' aptitude for learning occurs before they hit the public school system. Okay, it's from infancy on. We know that the kids whose parents talk to them and read to them and sing to them and blah blah blah, those kids get it's brain stimulation. Okay, and also how parents combine love and limits with the kids so that the kid feels loved but also doesn't think that they can run the world. All that's happening before they hit the educational system. Okay. And then we also know that how much parents are involved in their kids' education once they get to school is another big factor. So we're now talking about two-thirds or so, right? I'm just making up that number. Talking about the majority of what's going to happen with kids' education is not what the teacher does and what happens in the building.
That's right. I love that, the building-centric approach, because it's going back to what you said, trying to blame other people. Right. I mean, it's easy to point the finger at, well, is it the teacher? Is it the teachers' union? Is it the administrators within the building? Is it the administrators within the government that's governing what the building is going to do? All that ignores all those other important points. And those other important points are often lost in the conversation when they probably play a bigger part than, and the healthcare example. Oh my gosh. How important is that when you start thinking about the obesity epidemic that we are facing in this country, and how much that affects what does happen prior, or how it plays a part prior to people getting to the hospital, and then once they're in the hospital, and then it's often too late, right?
Exactly.
So again, how important is this root cause problem solving, and why isn't the real conversation happening? This is where I want to take this full circle, because one of the things that we do so well at Braver Angels, and one of the most important things when we talk about political, or just toxic polarization in general, not even political polarization, just toxic polarization, is the importance of conversation. And then, talk a little bit about how structure and the right structure means so much when it comes to those conversations, because we've all seen, I think most people have seen how ugly things can get when you just toss a bunch of people that disagree, and sometimes disagree vehemently on contentious topics. You just toss them together and hope for the best. Talk about the importance of conversation, and then more than that, the importance of structured conversation that we do at Braver Angels so well.
Yeah. So it's I call it the container. What's the container? the structure within which we're going to talk about really important things. Because so let's take all of the controversies about schooling, for example. If where parents on the left and the right think they share nothing in common, with these people who are either woke or haters, right? And I've seen this over and over. If you get those parents and maybe school professionals together for a structured conversation where you don't start with, should that book on trans be in the library, right? But you start with, what do we aspire to for our children's education about the world they're in? Okay, I've done this with there was a school district in suburban Minnesota where the school board was divided. Everybody was divided around whether the curriculum was too liberal and woke and down on conservatism. So what we did was we had a series of we met with parents and leaders on both sides of that who just wanted a truce. They wanted a truce, right? And then they invited their friends, and we had these living room conversations in people's houses. And we didn't start off with that book or that curriculum, right? We started off with what we call fishbowl conversations, where one group is in the middle, who are like-minded people answering some questions. The other group is just listening, seeing if they can find anything in common, and then they switch inner circle. And as I recall, the first question was, what do you aspire to in terms of your children's learning about the world that they're in, or something like that? Okay, well, you couldn't have told the difference between the two groups, okay?
Right.
The more conservative parents wanted the kids to know that we live in a very diverse world, a global world, where there's lots of different viewpoints and opinions, and they wanted them to be critical thinkers, okay? The liberal parents had the same goals, okay? The children understand the world, be comfortable in this sort of very diverse society, be critical thinkers. So they listened to each other, and then we had them in pairs, and then the whole group with, what did you learn about how people on the other side see their goals for their children? And did you say anything in common? And they were all surprised, because the liberals thought that the conservative parents wanted to, go back to another century or something like that, where they didn't understand that we live in a world with lots of different people, lots of different ideas. And the conservative parents didn't realize that the liberal parents want their kids not to just be indoctrinated into something. They want them to be, think carefully about everything and accept that part of this diversity is that there are people who are more conservative. It was all the good people with a good structure. The next question was, and this was a really important question, what regrets do you have, if any, about how your side has behaved in this controversy? Okay?
Good question.
Your side.
Very good question.
So people, they copped to it. After finding they had some things in common, both sides said, yeah, we got the social media crazy stuff happened there. They copped to it. And then the last question was, how do we go forward? Okay? And I swear to you, if with a different process, unstructured or whatever, the same people would have been at each other's throats.
That's right. No, that's absolutely right. We've seen it time and time again doing the work that we do at Braver Angels, how the structuring of these things work, the order that the questions are asked, and the importance of the way that the questions themselves are structured, and then more importantly, one of the things that I love about this work specifically, Bill, is the idea that people come in with a sense of where people come in and say, what's the point? Why am I even here? Because, every time I've tried something like this before, I'm either just shouted down or I'm talked to in a way that I just don't like and things like that. But then they come away at the end of like, I never, I never really thought of it this way, or I never really understood what the other side was thinking, or why they felt the way they felt, or what life experiences led them to believe what they believed. But now that I took the time to actually listen and understand, and I know that they listened and understood me, and so that reciprocity there of listening and understanding, it's just a beautiful thing.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. And it's not just that these people were completely going to have a great conversation no matter what. So sometimes people who are skeptics of what we do say, well, these are the kumbaya people. They go, no, these were not kumbaya people, okay? Because some of them were ringleaders of the social media wars, okay? But they wanted to get past it. But if you don't have the right process, they would have gotten triggered. Okay, and that happens to all of us. Get me triggered and on the defensive, and it brings out my worst angels. And so it's a combination of people have to be at least willing to come in, but they have to follow ground rules. And you have to have that kind of moderation. But over and over, when you create that environment, and part of it is the creating a process where you listen without having to respond.
Yes.
Where you're just sort of like, oh, okay, and then the next person talks, and you're listening to learn about how these people see the world, and whether you have anything in common with them. You listen with that focus. There's almost always something that you can latch onto.
Oh yeah, absolutely. This ties right back, and I want to tie it back to, again, that concept of thick versus thin view of citizenship.
Yeah.
It's like, what do you want to be? Do you want to be part of the solution, or do you want to continue to be part of the problem? Because at the very least, we should all be able to look at things in their current state and say, okay, there is a problem. Some people think the problem is bigger than others, and that's fine. We don't have to agree on what the degree of that problem is, but we should all be able to at least agree that there's a problem. And then we have to decide for ourselves as individuals, do I want to be part of the solution, or do I want to be continue to exacerbate and be part of that problem?
Yeah.
I think those who really have a strong desire for that thick view of citizenship can at least look at, what we do at Braver Angels and say, I maybe need to look at what I've been doing up to this point and decide then, do I want to sit down with a bunch of people with the intent to listen, to understand rather than simply respond, or do I want to continue being part of the problem?
Yeah, and if the problem is the polarized Congress, the polarized Washington, yeah, but that's out there. But how is it played out in our lives, and what can I do today? And also another part of this, Wilk, is giving up the illusion that any politician is going to save us.
That's right.
No matter how much you like them. And the whole thrust of our political system with a thin view of citizenship, we place too much reliance on our favorite politicians. And the more charismatic they are, the more we look for them to solve our problems. And it's a trap. It's a trap. And then short term, what we say is, well, if you look for the next election, the next 2 years or 4 years, and so my side's going to win. And meanwhile, the toxicity just increases. So part of thick citizenship is not over-relying on politicians or professionals, the teachers or the doctors. We have to respect all this. That's good. But ultimately, the big problems are those of all of us.
Yeah. No, that's absolutely right. That's absolutely right. And that's why I talk so much about personal accountability, personal responsibility. This has been a fantastic conversation, Bill. I love the fact that you've brought the concepts of thick view and thin view of citizenship to the DTH listeners. Such an important topic. It gives people something to think about. We've talked about some incredible action items, and now it's just people have to decide, do they want to be part of the solution or continue being part of the problem? And I think that thick view of citizenship is looking a lot more appealing, and people can really make a difference in their own lives.
Bill Doherty with Wilk Wilkinson on the podcast Derate the Hate. Many thanks to Wilk for allowing us to share such an illuminating interview. You can find our podcast, How Do We Fix It, and Derate the Hate on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. Our producer on this and every single one of our shows is Miranda Schaefer. I'm Richard Davies. Find more How Do We Fix It podcasts at howdowefixit.me. Thanks for listening.
This podcast is part of the Democracy Group.